So this is the beginning after the end of the video. I made something in the last video, and I was wrong. So I'm gonna correct it now. So basically, I said that you can make a tags blocks inside of your HMH3 folder with the mineable and pickaxe. That is actually wrong. You can't do that. So you're gonna have to delete the blocks folder with the mineable, and you are going to have to put it in the Minecraft folder. It doesn't work when it is in your folder. If you try and copy case it like that, it doesn't work. I'm not entirely too sure why, but that is just the case. So if you want your cement to be mineable, you are going to need to be able to place it in your thing. And I didn't mean to say your cement, your whatever block. If you also happen to make cement, I don't really care. But whatever blocks you want, they do actually have to be in the Minecraft data folder. So with that in mind, let's get back into the start of the video. Hello everybody, my name is Christian Quick, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be talking about sponges. So, how does one get started with that? We're going to actually complete our first idea entirely for a sponge. Now, I want to bring up basically two things. And so, first, we're making an advanced block. So an advanced block is not just called block. It's gonna need its very own class. And I want to make two things to do so. So first thing, we're gonna be making two new blocks. They are not gonna have emissive lighting like that. No siree. Let's get rid of this too. And then actually it's not supposed to have that extra like that. So let's go over, we basically want to basically be our sponge, our sponge, and the other one is going to be what the sponge uh, result, right? This is the idea. Since we are making a skulk sponge, we need to change this into an advanced block because there's nothing in our block types, our block settings that say absorb block. So we basically want a block to touch a block, and we're going to change everything. So how do I find something that I know exists in the game? We're going to have to look at where it came from. So here, if I call blocks include non-package items and go to net.minecraft.block and click on it, I can look for the sponge, and here we have the sponge block, and then I can middle mouse button click on here, and then basically the first thing that I would like to do is just go all the way up to extends, Control C, and then let's go into our block new Java class. Let's call it SCULK SPONGE Skulk Sponge, and then we are going to paste it. Now, the first problem you're always going to get when doing this needs to be the same name as this, and so sponge block here needs to be turned into Skulk Sponge, and suddenly your problems have gone away. There is one important thing that you need to do after this, is go in your mod blocks and change this block name into Skulk Sponge. And when you do that, you're golden basically, because now this Skulk Sponge is going to absorb water, and that is not what we wanted to do. I have two example classes for a lava sponge that I made, and so this was the first one I made a long time ago. The difference here is that this extends the sponge block. I would just recommend having it extend the block just like how they did it. Um, so, but beyond that, you can tell that everything is basically the same. That is literally what I did. The only thing I changed literally was I changed the fluid tags to lava, and then I called the absorb water into lava. But we're not doing that. We're absorbing not water. We're going to be absorbing, let's call it XP. And from here, we are going to have to call it up here, absorb XP. And, well, I can't do fluid tags at XP. This took a really long time to do this, but I made something called Sandskulk in the mod. And as you can tell, it is a lot simpler and easier. And I actually looked at two blocks for this, but we're not going to be talking about combining class files. That is going to be the next video. So in this video, we're just going to take the class. We're going to go Control C, and then we are going to take the class in here, and we are going to, I lost it. And then we are simply going to do Control V. And you can tell that this is much simpler, and we can try and break this down, but the best thing you want to do is take in keywords, what is going on, and then change whatever words are going on in here, right? So it said absorb water. We're not absorbing water. But now we're going to take some other keywords that we're looking at, and so basically blocks.wetSponge is the result. That is not what we want. So first off, it's not Minecraft block that we're changing. We want to change it into a block of our own. So I could call it like blocks dot, and then I can change it to anything that is Minecraft. And if I call air, it will basically just destroy the block. So it'll just soak whatever it is, and then it'll disappear. So it's like a one-time use sponge. And that is not what I'm going to be doing. So we're actually going to be making a mod blocks dot xp block. That is what we want. And the XP part. So now this is looking for a block state is of, and then we have skulk. So not bone block. Let's look for some skulk. And it is basically saying if it finds it, it's going to place blocks dot, and like I said earlier, if we wanted to drop nothing, we could call it air. So now with this, we have skulk. It's going to be absorbing some air, and well, so we have skulk sponge. We can get rid of this fluid tags and entity stuff, and this queue because this linked list is better. We have Skulk Sponge, which is our Skulk Sponge, and it is our sponge is being absorbed into an XP block, and it's gonna do that absorbing by touching Skulk and then turning into all that Skulk into air. It's got a pretty reasonable way of doing this. The only thing that I want to change is this will only take Skulk for a very short distance. Let's do J plus 1. Oop, no, just do J plus 1. If this is bigger than 64, and then I believe this has to be 6. Could be wrong. The way it was set up, it would only absorb one block, and that's no fun. We want this to absorb. Actually, we could actually take a look at our thing again. Let's look at the lava sponge. How is it looking like it's doing? So it's got 6 plus 1, and then 64 at the bottom with a 0. 64 with a 0. So that is basically, and then the top numbers, 1 and 0, 1 and 0. So, yeah, that's exactly how that works. With that in mind, that is basically that. So first, let us take a peek and let's see if it exists, or if it's working. Let's see if it's working. So I got Skulk, and I got nothing about it. So right now, all it's going to be doing is absorbing Skulk. That is literally everything. But we could do a lot better than just that, of just absorbing Skulk, right? Let's try and absorb all the families of Skulk, including the Catalyst, the Veins, and the Shriekers and everything else. Let's turn the XP into material.glass to try and stay uniform with like the XP block, how it is like that. Other things that we're going to need to work on is the textures and everything. So right now we know that the block is working, but it is missing all of its brand, glory, and beauty. So let's try and make some custom textures and then place them in the game. Alright, here we are in GIMP, and I have a sponge, and I have an XP block, and I basically want to make Skulk look like a sponge, and I do this by opening a brand new thing. I want to take 5 colors from here, and we're going to look from the darkest to the lightest block. So it looks like this is the dark block, and then, oh, cancel. We're going to put it on here, so that is dark, so that is going to be 1. Then it looks like we have this is going to be 2. Looks like then we have this 3. Looking again, we have this, which looks like 4. And then the brightest texture, this nice, very, very nice. It's almost like a diamond color. So that is our 5 color scheme. And then let's grab the same thing. Let's look at the darkest colors on here. So it looks like this very dark yellow. So we got that. So now we have the completed this. Now that we have the color scheme from here, I actually don't need this because I'm not changing that. But now I need to find the darkest color. So we got things like this, and then we got these, and then we need to fill in that darkest color with the darkest color here. So now does that look like a sponge? Not really. Not really. Is there anything I'm going to do about it? Let's... Let's take a look at this color here. And let's make it a little bit less on the gray side by moving it to the right, making it a more fine color, a more fill color as well. And then let's hit this bucket, because I think the color is very different, that we can just fill it in. Alright, does it look any much more like a sponge? No, but I think it looks a lot better than it did. So let's file, export as, and then for sponge, we're not putting it in there. Let's put it in pictures, and then we are going to be calling it Skulk Sponge. Export. And then this one's going to get a little bit more complicated. Let's pick what textures I want, because I know that there are so many. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this one's got 6 colors to it. And then let's think if I want to split some of this up. I think I do. So let's take a look at our darkest texture here. Alright, so I'm going to save these 2 colors for a texture, and I'm going to skip it because I'm splitting that one texture into the other. So I'm going to skip it and then go the other direction. So here, let's make the very bright yellow, and fill in all these little pieces. And then let's go backwards. So let's take everything that's basically touching yellow, right? And if there's anything blue that is directly touching yellow, let's do those first. And that saves plenty of room for that final color, this green one, to squeeze in, and it should fit very nicely. And now we have this XP hodgepodge. Now coming back, we are ready. We don't have to do all the... Remember how I said there's the data, and then you'd have to put it in like 6 times and all that name? We now have data generation, so let's do the generation for the model provider. And we now have 2 blocks. So let's put it in, and then let's look for the Skulk Sponge and the XP block. And then let's take a look at what they will be dropping. So the XP block is not going to be dropping anything, and the Skulk Sponge will say that it can still drop Skulk Sponge. So the idea is, if I put Skulk Sponge on Skulk, it'll change its block into XP block, and then if I put it on anything else, it's going to stay as Skulk Sponge. So when we come into loot tables, we can do loot table generator. And so we only want, let's add it like this, and then Control D, add blocks, and we can do this for Skulk Sponge. And so we're not going to do this for the XP because we're going to want the XP to drop absolutely nothing. So now we have in our model provider, it is going to set the block states in here, which will automatically point for the textures. It's going to cube it on all sides, and that's practically what we want, which is going to point to our textures. And so all we have to do is go into our assets, textures, block, and then let's go into here, pictures, and then let's put the Skulk Sponge in here, refactor, and then let's put in the XP block, refactor, and then we cannot run the client yet. We have to go to Gradle, run DataGen, let it do its amazing work, and then when it tells me build successful, because I feel like such an amazing coder, then I will return the client. So now it is done, so now we can run the client. Alright, so now we have ourselves Skulk Sponge, and it seems that we forgot the lang files, but that is okay. We drop it on here, and we can break it. It'll give us some XP. If we place it and then break this, it will drop our Skulk Sponge back. So that is perfectly fine. So one thing it's not doing is absorbing all the other stuff, so we still have to do that. So XP is short for experience, so we'll write out the whole word, experience block, and then Skulk Sponge is still going to be kept as Skulk Sponge. For the Skulk Sponge itself, let's try and add all types of Skulk. So for this, we know that Skulk is being called and then changing stuff to air. So when I know that something is happening inside of a method, I want to repeat that method. And it won't affect, it generally shouldn't affect anything else. If I try and did Control D here, and then I try to did it, the code will look fine. It won't give you any errors, but the problem is it will have errors because block state is being called. What you have to do is realize that this is being called and it's trying to do everything in here. And the easiest way that I would know how to do this is if you know that an entire method and everything in the method is being called works, just repeat the method. And we would do it like this. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to add 5 types. And so one is going to basically look for the direction of all the values for Skulk. One is going to look for the direction of all values for Skulk. So we have Skulk Vein. We are going to have Skulk Shrieker. We're going to have Skulk Catalyst. And then we have Skulk Sensor. So that is all of them. You can put them in any, this is probably a pretty bad, alphabetical is usually a good way to put everything, but let's just see how this works. And it's looking as everything should. So let's say I am around Skulk Shrieker and I want it to get soaked up. So I want to get a little bit close, and then we can literally just absorb everything in the area. Look at that, it revealed some diamonds, how interesting. And then I can literally just break this, it'll drop me some levels, and then I can just kind of continue sneaking around. And so that is the purpose. The only thing that seems to be missing now would be a way to create this. When talking about block creation, like the recipe for it, so sponge block in its Skulk Sponge will actually make XP block, so we don't have to worry about a recipe for it, but there does need to be a way to make Skulk Sponge. And so let's go into our crafting table and let's put in the sponge that we are trying to make as the result. And let's say it requires sponge on the outside. Then let's see if this is updated. It is. So now I have to think of a nice and creative way that we could possibly do this. We could say, do I want to put skulk veins on it? Do I want to put the echo shard on it? I feel like this is a pretty good idea. Alright, so echo shards are non-renewable while skulk is renewable. So let's just cover this thing in some skulk veins, just like that. I could probably do it all the way around, but I think just doing a 4 cross is perfectly fine. And then we are just going to Control Z. And then we are going to add it to our recipes. So here we are going to call for SCU skulk sponge dot JSON. I always forget that sometimes. And then we have to call it as HMH3 skulk sponge. And so now the recipe exists, so now we have to do the advancement recipe. So let's put in here, and then let's skulk sponge. Alright, and then this is basically saying when I get an item, not a Minecraft stick, let's look for either Minecraft sponge or Minecraft skulk vein. Then it will give me skulk sponge and then skulk sponge. So now we should have the advancement recipe and the recipe in here. I think that should be everything all done and covered. It is now obtainable in survival. It can be used in survival, so it basically changes your stuff. I made it renewable and stuff like that. Alright, and here we are at the main base. We can take our spruce log and turn it into a crafting table. And then in here we'll take our sponge and our skulk veins, put them in the correct places, and we got skulk sponge. And let's absorb that out here. And so when I have a skulk vein, skulk catalyst, shrieker, and sensor, and then if I dare place, it'll all be absorbed into a sponge that can then be absorbed into many levels. Some rules about this is if I have something placed like this, it'll just absorb one of them. But as long as somehow, it doesn't matter if they're touching like this, or if they're touching of different blocks or the same block, if they are scattered out like a checkerboard pattern, it will only clear whatever it can directly touch. So, those are the rules. Alright, and that is everything that I am going to be doing for this video. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and without further ado,